On this episode of the Post House Podcast, a man who hails from the Emerald Isle shares his love of whiskey and how your business should have a purpose greater than its products and services. It's the co-founder of Storyforge, Barry Chandler.
All right, so here we are, another Post House Podcast. I have a very special guest here, Mr. Barry Chandler. How are you, sir?
I'm great. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Good. So I thought we would start the podcast off the exact same way that I met you. And that is
I know what's coming.
with a glass of whiskey.
All right.
So a little
Hey.
the old
Nice. Got a little bit of patties
I had
there.
to make a little special run for that, but that one
Good for you.
holds a little special place for me.
Absolutely.
So I don't know how much we pour here, but you tell me.
That's good. Yeah, that's good. That should get us through an episode.
So
Or 6.
I found out your secret to business development is you break out the whiskey, you get them drunk, and then they spend money with you.
Look, all we do is we tell stories, we sip on nice whiskey, and if we happen to connect personally, maybe we'll do business. But at the very least, we've had whiskey.
Well, here we go. Cheers to the podcast.
Sláinte. Cheers.
So I met you at a whiskey tasting. We were invited down to your office, and I was in a rush to get to a hockey game.
Story of your life.
It is. I think I was probably coming from a hockey situation and then going to a hockey game, but I grabbed an Uber over to the arena and said, you know what, that guy is awesome. So I want to see how we can work together. And the opportunity came up a few months later.
Yeah.
We engaged in a self-reflective process that you call Storyforge. But before we jump into that, give me a little background. So, I mean, you come from
I come from a land far away.
Yes, and I did good Irishman here. I have
10 days before St. Patrick's Day.
I
You
know.
get me on the podcast.
Well, I think we might launch this right around St. Patty's Day. So that was kind of our plan. But you come from a hospitality background.
Yep.
You spent, you know the Irish water here.
I do. I'm a fan of
pretty
the brown
well.
water. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about, give me a little backstory on Barry.
Sure. So from Ireland, if the accent doesn't give it away, I've been in the US 12 years. Trained as a hotel manager, worked all around the world on in hotels, on cruise ships, for hotel chains, in restaurants and bars, ran hotels in Ireland, ran restaurants, and eventually started consulting with bars, restaurants and hotels, built a small software company to help those same clients, expanded that to the UK, to the US, spun a little marketing agency out of that software company, and then eventually those businesses were acquired by our biggest client. Moved me out to California. I spent 2 years living in San Diego as chief marketing officer for an entertainment company, and got burnt out by the large corporation, and it kind of spat me out. I'd worked for years for myself, and then suddenly I was in this slow moving beast of a company. And I came back to Columbus to help businesses figure out their strategy, their direction, their story, what made them unique, what made them stand out. I was obsessed with that, and started Storyforge in 2014 with a friend of mine who's now my business partner. And together, Haley and I have, we spent the last 5 years helping businesses untangle the complexities of their business so that they can tell a simple story internally and externally, so they can align their teams, their people, their customers, and help them stand out and help them do good work.
So that was what I felt like we needed at the time. We were kind of going through a little growing pains. Knowing that you had an entrepreneurial background, I felt very relatable to you. Anytime anyone can see there's a window of opportunity and open up a business and run that business, it takes a special type of personality to be able to navigate that. And then for you to go off into the corporate world and then come back out. I think we all know that's there's that little bit of desire to always want to be an entrepreneur, once you're kind of there. And I related with that, and
Right.
I knew that you would have a unique perspective of how to kind of untangle the things that we were going through. So we engaged with Storyforge, and I have to say that it was one of the hardest things that I have ever done as a business owner. Is to be super aware, super self-reflective of the process. But at the end of the day, we distilled it down that we had, really our area, or our differentiator in the market was our relationship game and what that meant, on a personal level, on a creative level, and obviously because this is what we do, it's a professional level. So walk me through, because I've done it, so it's not fair to the audience, but walk me through the Storyforge process.
So if I think back to when we first started chatting, when you met me and when other clients meet me and you're evaluating whether I might be able to help, but we're doing the same. I'm trying to understand, well, is there an opportunity? Can I help? Or would I want to spend my time with these people? And the answer after a few whiskeys with you guys was, I'd love to spend more time with you guys. You seem awesome. And there was clearly something there. I knew from our first conversation that you had something special here, but it wasn't articulated. You hadn't yet put your finger on what it was. There were things you had done as a leader innately, so naturally to you because it's who you are, but maybe they hadn't always been explained as to how you make decisions or how you've built a company or how you'd like things done. And that's the same for so many leaders. And so our process is designed to help engage the team members, engage customers, engage vendors or partners, engage stakeholders in a dialogue, a conversation, to understand perceptions, understand what it is they need, what keeps them up at night, what are their struggles, what are their challenges. We're really looking for that intersection between the things you're best at and the things people need so that everybody wins. And what is the thing that we can find that helps you stand out, that articulates why you're different and you're not just a video production company. And I maintained from day one that you weren't. You did amazing video production work, you still do, but that wasn't going to be enough.
Right.
That there was something else there. So our process was to uncover what was the other thing. Buried beneath all the amazing portfolio work and client engagements, there's something else there that I know is why your customers come back, and it's why your employees have stayed here for years.
Right. And I think that was, knowing that we weren't always like just a video production company, and by our trade name and our, we tried to make some marketing moves to reposition us a few years ago where, Post House was an industry name. That's where you took your, you took your video that you shot or your film that you shot, you took it to a post-production house. So the short form of it was Post House. And I was like a little bit amazed back in the day that was even available. Like that name was available.
Yeah.
So, we wanted to be top of mind. So it was good for marketing. Like, yeah, let's take it to a Post House. That was back in the day when we just did editorial. When we realized that we were doing more things, we thought, well, we do creative, so like, let's put Post House Creative in there. So that's where that came from. But yeah, still we suffered from kind of being a little bit myopic.
Right.
Especially myself as a person who's, in it 24/7, can never really escape it. I always knew that like, there's more to this. I don't know how to articulate the feelings that I have. What seemed very straightforward and simple for me to understand because I think about it 100 times a day, wasn't being translated. So there was a breakdown in communication, but at the end of the day, we knew that there was this relationship piece.
Right.
And I think like as we were circling, doing the brainstorming, we just kept circling like, it's about the relationship. We really care about our people. We really care about our clients, and the relationship part is super valuable. We know that our best customers are our longest customer, relationships. So like, what did you see from an outsider that was there that we weren't wrong in the relationship part, but we still knew we were misfiring on other things?
So you hit on something there that is so common to leaders. In their mind, it's very simple. It's very obvious, and they can't figure out why the whole company isn't aligned with that thing. After all, you can see the future. You see visionary leaders see 5 years into the future. They know the business they want to have. They've been working towards it their whole business career, their whole life. Why is it that the whole team or our customers or the marketplace doesn't get what we're doing? And that's such a common thing. And the reason is because it goes back to this point of it's so natural to you. We forget that it's not natural to everybody else, or that there are 100 other things to distract people from the thing you're thinking about. So when we went through our process to figure out what was the thing that was true for you, or what was your vision, and what did you do differently? Because you've built a business based on your skills, your beliefs, but those might not have always been obvious to everybody as to why you made certain decisions that way. My job was to just uncover those. They were already there. Our job was to surface them. And in doing so, we realized that you had made so many decisions over the years to work with clients that you wanted to spend time with, that you'd enjoy hanging out with. When the shoot was over, you could go for a drink together and you'd have a great time. You hired employees that you spent time with. You guys did things as a team. Often, you guys were a tight group in a tight environment, and you enjoyed working alongside one another, and many of your team members have been here for many years. And so we started to see this theme emerge. You knew in your heart things that I didn't know. Like I didn't know you were a relationship guy until I started this. Now you've been you've been married for many years. You've built personal relationships in your life that are long term, right? You hang out with people you've been friends with for 20 plus years,
Right,
more.
yeah. Yep.
So those are things I didn't know, but you've been making decisions because of how you approach life. You've been making business decisions that way too. So my job was to figure out, how do we articulate what's unique here based on some of your beliefs and your vision? And it turned out that the very people who stay here and work here and the customers who come back again and again, it turns out they value exactly the same thing. And that's why they stay here. And we don't often step back and think, well, why is somebody here? And why do they come back? And it's rarely because we provide video production services or a paycheck.
Right.
Because those are not the people we want. Ultimately, we want people who believe in what we believe. And that's what we worked to find out, was what is the thing? And eventually we hit on 3 things.
Right, which are our personal fulfillment, creative fulfillment, and professional fulfillment. And so that's kind of what this, my version of the podcast here is about. Is I like to talk about those things because they're important to me. The relationship part is, falls in my personal bucket, right? My silo. Obviously, this is a creative outlet, so that's fun. And it's, also it's personally fulfilling because I get to talk. I get to do
Right.
the relationship part. But like from a professional standpoint, like, it's nice. Our podcast has been out for a while, and people are like, oh wow, you guys, are doing it right. I was like, well, I hope we know how to kind of do it
Right.
a little bit. I mean, it is kind of
Yeah.
our profession. We do get paid to do these types of things, but what I like to ask our guests are like, what in your line of work, what's personally fulfilling about Storyforge, or the you're the chief whiskey taster or chief whiskey officer.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what's personally fulfilling about what you get to do.
So for some reason, my skill happens to be identifying the simplest story in a complex situation and honing in on that story that is an authentic story to the person or the business and matters to the people we're telling it to. Maybe it's the Irish in me. Maybe we're grown, like we grew up as storytellers. We're born being able to tell a good yarn, but somehow, for some reason, that's what I do and that's what I can do. So what's really fulfilling for me is the moment when we hit on the story, when after weeks, or in some cases months, of turning over stones, of having conversations, to your point earlier, tough conversations, hard work, because we're faced with harsh realities of our own business and our existence. And often in business, we don't get presented those things. But after going through things like that, being able to suddenly turn over the stone and see the word or the sentence, and everyone looks at it and says, that's it. That's the thing that ties us all together. That's enormously fulfilling for me, because I know what the business can do now that they have that. It means they can do more good. They can maybe employ more people, give people a better life. They can have a greater impact on the world. And all that was missing was the word or the story or the sentence. And so I feel like if I'm just that one small bit that helps empower those businesses to do what they do best. So that's really fulfilling for me.
So as a storyteller, you get to be relatively creative in your presentation. Obviously you're very well articulated. You know how to take all this information, craft it, spit it out into a presentation, into, even a really great creative writer to like come down to like, well, here's what your manifesto is. Here's all the materials. Is that the part of the business for you that's creatively fulfilling, or is there other things? Like what gets your creative juices going?
I've learned that I'm not the most detail-oriented person.
Neither am I.
I have, right? Okay, so you're a visionary. You've got your head in the clouds where they should be, right? And you need to be up there. You need to be in the clouds to look down and see the world and make decisions as to how it should look, and you'll do that through your company. I'm similar in the sense that I really struggle with sitting down at a desk for an hour and doing something. I'm a conceptual person. I'm a dreamer, and I see a dream, but I have trouble sometimes in the detail needed to bring that to life. So I have been smart enough to bring in people who can help me craft that, right? Who can take the thing that's in my head and turn it into something beautiful. And yes, I'm still part of that process, but I'm not I wouldn't say I'm a great copywriter, but I'm certainly, I can find the thing, the concept, the essence.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I'm best suited, I think. Yeah.
So
Did that answer your question?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately there is no wrong answer, but
Yeah.
If the concepting, that's the part of your career that's creatively fulfilling. But I mean, you get to do a lot of other really cool things. I mean, you find a passion that you like. Your whiskey business
Yeah.
is great, and you get to tell stories that way.
Right.
Walk me through a little bit of that and your creative process. Like, do you come up with those presentations yourself? Are
For
they
the whiskey tastings?
Yeah, I mean, is that all stuff that's provided for you, or and then you just kind of figure out a way to say it, or
Yeah. So
how's it go?
I guess some background on that. So I've got Storyforge, which is the business that helps
Right.
with the brand strategy and the storytelling for a business. And then I've got Stories and Sips, which is my Irish whiskey tasting experience company. So I'm passionate about Irish whiskey. I feel very proud about this amazing export that comes out of Ireland. I grew up 12 miles from the Jameson distillery. I'd walk out every morning out of my house, and maybe it was in the air. Maybe I inhaled a little bit of Jameson growing up. But I'm passionate about Irish whiskey. And so a few years ago, I'm a big fan of, a big participant in Pelotonia, the Columbus-based bike ride to raise money for cancer research at the James Cancer Research Hospital. And I've been riding that for a few years, and it's a high cost of entry. It costs a lot of money to raise. You have to raise a lot of money to get to participate. And I got tired of asking people for money. And so what I decided to do was host a whiskey tasting, leverage my authentic Irishness and the bit of the accent that I have, and tell stories about whiskeys. I'm not an academic whiskey expert. I'm not a distiller. I can't tell you every aspect of every piece. But what I can do is tell you the stories behind the people. I can tell you stories behind the places, or stories about our country and our history with relation to whiskey. So I started this whiskey tasting 3 years ago, and it took off. People loved it, and they asked me to do more, and I would do more tastings. And then I started raising money for other charities like the Buckeye Ranch and the Columbus Speech and Hearing Center. And now I work with a number of whiskey brands, and I run experiences to introduce people to whiskey through storytelling, not through an academic, let's analyze the distillate here and how many days it's been in this kind of wood, etc. But more, let's sing some songs, let's learn about Ireland, let's learn a little bit of the Irish language, let's prepare you for Ireland through whiskey. So I get to tell stories, I get to put together presentations that for me highlight the best of Ireland, that I'm able to share passionately and authentically what we do best. And I do that through the whiskey experiences, and I have a number of different experiences that I do that with. And I know we've put, you guys have gone through my whiskey tasting experience.
We went through the private whiskey tasting,
right.
which we realized was a nice little cost of entry here.
The first one's always free.
Yeah, no, that's right. And then the next one was great. I think we did it right around Christmas time or something. Just kind of a little thank you for the year. Got to do that. That was great. And it really is a fun time. I mean, yeah, you lay out 4 or 5 different blends here, and we get to have a little shot glass of them and taste them, and the stories are great. The accent, of course, is near and dear to my heart. So it's a lot of fun, and I know you do it philanthropically. I mean, but there's a lot of avenues for it to make your transition to your professional life. So I mean, it's kind of a win-win, right? You get to be fulfilled that way, and then also you get to work in your professionalism, because it is when you start, people obviously, they start to build a rapport and relationship with you and become trustworthy over a couple glasses of whiskey, and then next thing you know, like, oh yeah, I have this other thing that I do. And
well, what you've hit on there is the essence of your own business. We're not doing business to sell a thing.
Not at all.
And
it's a result.
It is a result. And in our case, yes, did whiskey bring us together? It did. But what it really did was it facilitated an environment where we could have a discussion to see, do we like each other? Does anybody do we want to be in the same room? Because look, life is short. We want to spend our time with people that we enjoy spending time with. And so I think it's a great opportunity. I always maintain whiskey. You shouldn't drink whiskey alone. You should always open a bottle with somebody, because it starts a conversation. You can build a deeper relationship with somebody over a glass of whiskey. Yeah, and it's a nice, easy way to do it. And so I was delighted that we had the opportunity to do that, because otherwise, how will we really get to know that we want to hang out?
Right.
And we want to work together. And if we had never worked together after that, what would have been
we still had a good glass of whiskey.
We would have had a good glass of whiskey.
Yeah.
And
probably
it would have been a win.
We probably would have brought you in on some other things that we would have had, to use that tasting experience for some other things that we do philanthropically, and still probably will. And that's where, this process for me, and I have you to thank, and you and your partner to thank a lot for it, is that, it really opened my eyes to like what we were really trying to do here, and articulate it in a way that is somewhat vague, but yet very simple, that, we are just trying to be happy in our everyday life. I wanted this place, I've always wanted a company that was a place that, you could be, that you felt like it was a shelter from the rest of your world. And I
Yeah.
remember telling you
I
this
remember
and
this.
getting a little emotional about it
Yeah.
because, everyone's got to deal with crap. And if you got to spend 40, 60 hours a week at some place, you don't want that place to feel like crap. And you want that to be a place to where you can find yourself or you can express yourself through your art. And that's that creative fulfillment side. Personally, you want to be around people that you like, so in our hiring process, a lot of the times we've worked with someone for a long time as a freelancer, as a vendor, to know that, hey, we really like this person. We want them to be part of our team, or they were on the client side.
Right.
And then now they're on, our team. So, and then obviously we have to make a living. So, and we're, I believe we're pretty good at what we do. So therefore we can get paid for doing that service. But like, that's kind of like on the back end.
Yeah. So I think that like many businesses, your personal beliefs and your vision. So when you started the business, it was this, you wanted Post House to be this shelter or sanctuary from a tough world where not all businesses take care of their employees and not all businesses or business owners think like you. But as businesses grow and they become more complex, you take on clients, you take on employees. Now there's not 2 people at the table, there's 10, there's 20, there's 30. That vision can get lost in the day-to-day reaction, firefighting, and it's understandable. Businesses are complex. But the great success comes from the ability to get back to that early founding vision and dive into it a little bit. And you talked about getting emotional, and I'll never forget just you sharing some great stories at the time as to why it was so important that this was a sanctuary or why this was a place where people could develop, could grow, could have somewhere that they could call a space to thrive. As soon as you started talking like that, I started to see the intersection between other areas of the business. I could see how you had applied that without telling anybody. It was like the best kept secret. You had just made decisions that way. And what an amazing thing to be able to then articulate, because wouldn't that be of interest to potential business clients or to potential employees to know that story? That to me is far more interesting than, hey, we've amazing equipment. We just spent 10 grand on a camera. Okay, so did they. And there's a new camera next week, right? So it's not really about the equipment. It's not about the services. I'm sure there's 100 video production companies in Columbus or more. But why do you stand out? Well, I think your standout story is more to do with your own vision and your belief in what a workplace should be and how that impacts the client life or the client project. That's far more interesting. And if price is the same or you're being compared to other video production companies, I'd like to think that if somebody believes what you believe, they're going with you every time.
And that's, that's well articulated, and that's why we hired you, right? Is to find this out. And so like the steps that we've taken, like that was the other thing in your process is like, you kind of go through this like emotional drain of like finding the process. And then it's like, well, to make it really successful is now you kind of got to walk the walk. Like you kind of got, and I just remember like, we had to make another decision of whether to, continue to the next step. And I was just exhausted.
Yeah.
I was completely
Why
exhausted.
were you exhausted? What was the struggle?
I think that the struggle was that, it's like you've gone through all this, you found all this stuff out, you've basically purged your inner, mind of like all your emotions, all your working, how you tick in a very therapeutic but very productive way. That like you wanted to see the light at the end of the tunnel when really you just were entering the tunnel because you were walking a different
So
path.
as we got to the end of that first phase where we arrived at that story, we had realized, that's the thing. You were hoping that was the end.
I was hoping, but then
I said, actually, that's just the beginning.
It is the beginning, and it really is just the beginning. But it gives you a good foundation. It's like you tear down, you tear down the house, and then you have to build this foundation. And you're just exhausted from building the foundation. You're like, I got to build the walls, and now I got to do the roof. And then, once you get into like hopefully the inner finishings of your house, if you could use a building analogy, that like, hopefully I don't have to do those things anymore because like they'll already know like what everyone's taste is. They'll know like it'll become their own without it having to be articulated.
Well, think of it like I often use the whiskey metaphor. It's very fitting. We're sitting here drinking a lovely whiskey, distilled almost out 12 miles from where I grew up. This lovely whiskey comes from. Look, the process of whiskey making is starting with a lot of ingredients, water, barley. You put a lot into the into the stills and eventually you distill it down over triple distillation to the best bit of it. And by the end of your distillation, you have the heart of the distillate, which is the best thing that could have come out from all that whiskey, all that barley, all that water. You now have a barrel. And that barrel will age for a bit and it'll mature and it'll get better. And then once it's ready to be bottled, and it is bottled, it can now go off and it can please a lot of people. It can make many people happy. But we had to first start with a lot of barley and a lot of water. Just like here, we started with a lot of perspectives, thoughts. We distilled. We got to a story. And once we forged it and crafted it and thought about it, like a barrel aging, whiskey aging in the barrel, we were then ready to go out to the world. And what's one of the first things you did? You started a podcast.
Yeah, and this has been it's been fulfilling on multiple levels for me doing this. I don't even know how many people watch. I don't even know how many people listen. But we do get feedback, and it's nice to know that people they're interested. Because it's a little bit of a business podcast, a little bit of creative podcast, but at the end of the day, it's I think people understanding like how people work, how people think,
right, and
you're way more interesting. My guests are way more interesting than I'll ever be because they have a perspective and. I like to do the interview, but I like to listen, because what I can learn so much from, the person sitting across from me than, I could ever just assume.
It's a win-win.
It is. And, so kind of let's turn the ship here a little bit, like a little bit more about you. So give me some fun facts. Obviously you're an Irishman, born, raised in Ireland.
Born, raised in Ireland, spent the first 28 years of my life in Ireland. Yep.
So, give me your favorite, in a little rapid fire. What's your favorite land dish?
Homeland dish. I would say like a beef and Guinness stew. I hate to be a stereotype.
Not bangers and mash, or
No, that'd be more English than Irish, I would say.
Okay.
You can get it in Ireland, but I would say, obviously potatoes. Potatoes are big.
Yeah, it's the reason why I'm here, I think.
Right, the famine.
Yeah.
Sent your ancestors over here.
So someone pointed back to that.
There you go. Yeah, so because the potatoes were taken away from us in the 1800s, we like to be close to them now for fear that
for sure
somebody else might take them again. So potatoes are a good part of any dish. People laugh at me how many potatoes I eat, but they're full of protein.
Right? No, they're good.
They're great.
I mean, who doesn't like a potato, and who doesn't like a potato fried, right?
Yeah.
So
many ways to do it.
All right. So you're into a lot of different whiskeys. Is that your favorite drink from?
Yeah, I would say that over the years, I've moved from drinking beer to drinking predominantly whiskey. Not that I consume in any excessive amount, but if I am participating in a drink, I will have a whiskey. And I find beer to be a waste of good barley.
Okay,
we should instead be putting it into whiskey. I just think that there's something so romantic about the art of whiskey making. It is the most unscientific thing in the world. There's loss. There's it's just a torturous process that is imperfect, and that's the beauty of it. And we're drinking a whiskey now that has aged for about between 3 and 5 years in a barrel. So for 3 to 5 years in a warehouse in Middleton and County Cork, as the weather changed, the sun shone, the rain came down, that barrel slowly heaved, contracted, and the staves of the barrel moved in and out, and the whiskey went in and out of the wood, aging slowly for 3 to 5 years. Imagine that. Imagine what happened in our life in 3 to 5 years.
Oh, of course.
And now we get to look at that, and we get to ponder it. We get to think about it. And we get to connect with people over that glass. What a miracle we have here in front of us, So for me to choose anything else or to shoot it, it drives me crazy to see people shooting a whiskey that spent years in a barrel, waiting for its moment, and it's gone down the throat in a half second.
Well, we were talking earlier, St. Patty's Day is coming up.
Yeah.
The Guinness is a big... Guinness and Jameson, they play a big part in that holiday here and stateside. Is it same? I feel like we've talked about this. It's definitely more of a party here than party elsewhere.
I have to acknowledge and admire the enthusiasm for St. Patrick's Day here in America. It's like nothing we do in Ireland. Look, when I was growing up in Ireland, St. Patrick is our patron saint. So Ireland was, and to a large extent is, a Catholic country, and St. Patrick was our patron saint, so it was a feast day. So the pubs were closed and the churches were open, which meant that you went to Mass on St. Patrick's Day, and then maybe there was a small parade in your town, you went down to see it. And the most patriotic you could have been was if you wore a little sprig of shamrock on a little pin on your clothes. But you didn't wear anything green. There was no big drinking. There was nobody wearing foam fingers and waving them around. There was no people lying in the gutter. I'm sorry to disappoint you all, but for some reason, the Americans have elevated this to a whole new experience, which is admirable, and it has created quite the capitalistic opportunity, I'm sure, for many bars and restaurants to cash in. But it's a good thing. We have to, from an Irish perspective, I celebrate the enthusiasm, because it could be far worse. What if nobody liked the Irish?
Right.
Right. So it's this enthusiasm that has allowed me to tell stories about whiskey, and
Everybody's a little bit Irish on
everybody
St.
is.
Patrick's Day.
That's right.
I thought I was gonna be real like lame and wear like I'm an Irish shirt or something here today, or like, but I felt a little bit that'd been a little bit disrespectful.
Well, you've already got the Irish name, Flaherty.
I do.
Good Cork name, actually, and the whiskey's named after Paddy Flaherty.
That's why that might be why I bought it.
That was our connection.
It was. You get to travel quite a bit. Like that's one of your guys' like little pillars of your company is that you wanted to have the freedom to explore the world, to work from wherever you wanted. I think it was like 2018 that you made the decision to try to be as paperless as possible,
Right.
and try to cut down on your footprint.
Yep.
Tell me a little about your passion for travel, and how do you? I mean, you get to go back home quite a bit. And,
Yeah.
like, what's your passion? Because everyone here is kind of got the travel bug, a little bit of a wanderlust, and we try to turn that into business opportunities.
Sure.
But give me your travel background here.
I think I could trace it back to Ireland. Ireland is a small country. We're on the periphery of Europe. We're this rock on the west coast of Europe. And for hundreds of years, we've been sending people out into the world because there wasn't enough for them in Ireland. Food, jobs, there was nothing. And so people for many years have been emigrating around the world. And I think there's a part of us that's just a wandering soul. We get nervous if we have to stay in the same place for too long. And I've always been like that. There's an Irish comedian. His name is Tommy Tiernan. And he has this great, wouldn't be a sketch, but more this observation. When he first moved to the west coast of Ireland, he grew up inland in Ireland, and he first moved to Galway in the west coast, and it was the first time seeing ships. And he saw these big ships sailing off into the Atlantic, off west towards America. And he says he remembers standing on the beach screaming at the ships, "Go on, you can do it. This is amazing. You can do it." Just the opportunity he saw for these ships going off into the world was something he had never known. And it made him want to travel more. And I think we've all got that little bit of what's around the corner. So yes, travel has always been a part of my life. I spent 4 years working on cruise ships, traveling around the world. I've worked in hotels and restaurants around the world. And since I've been here in the US, I've been trying to build a business that allows me to do more of that. Businesses have to be responsive to the needs of their clients. And so if you're needed in person, you're needed in person. But we've been trying over the last, we've put a bigger push in the last 12 months is to work with more clients in remote places. In other words, could we have the same impact without being physically there?
Right.
And it turns out we can in many cases. And so we've been working with more and more clients that don't need us to be physically present. It means we don't have to be physically present. And so we've been traveling a little bit more. So this year, my wife and I, our goal is to be every second month in Columbus. But the other month we'll find somewhere to try and live as a local and see if we like it and just be based there. So we're going to be in New York for the month of April, back here for the month of May, in Ireland for the month of June, back here for the month of July, and then we still haven't decided what August looks like, but that's our goal. So for the rest of the year, if we can keep that up, that's going to be a good indicator of whether we can do it or we can't do it.
No, that's fantastic. And I think that falls into, creating a space for yourself, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur that allows you that freedom, right? And I a lot of people misconstrue, I think, business owners or entrepreneurs as like, they want, it's all about the money. It's all about this. But really, for me, it's really about the freedom and the ability to make those choices. Obviously, as you get bigger and, things start to scale, your choices impact, a lot more people.
Right.
And that weighs really heavy. But at the end of the day, that's the thing that like drives me the most is probably the freedom to like, if it would be a lot different business if I were wanting to take a month, and go somewhere else. Cause the interaction that's needed on the reg, is so important because of the relationships that I have, because we're building relationships. We got to keep that relationship.
But you're finding what's working for you. So if, let's say that is a thing that hopefully is going to work for us, it won't be the same for every business, but, but could any business take a step back and think about, well, I could keep making money and I could keep pursuing that. But I heard a great quote from somebody the other day he was a consultant for a business, and the business owner was determined to just work 80 hours a week. This guy was in his 60s, and the consultant turned to him and said, that building won't fit in your grave. And I thought that was a great way of looking at it. You can't take it with you. So what would be the most valuable thing in your life now? Is it that you build this thing to be bigger? Or is it that you go lie on a beach, you go read a book, you go spend time with your family, you go stand over a puddle and ponder it, think about life? I don't know. Whatever is your thing, could you go and do that? And what's preventing you? And I think societal expectations or business expectations are, we must always be working. Well, must we?
Right, and I think that's that's a fine line, and one of the things that we've discovered in that, we try to think about our time. If we think about in percentages, there's 80% of the time that we want to, at least I try to budget for our staff, is like I want them to think of that as like, yeah, that's work,
Yeah.
but you should be able to find your happiness in
Right.
those that 80%. The other like 10%, like I really want them to be able to have time for personal growth,
Yeah.
personal fulfillment. But then that other 10% is philanthropic.
Right.
And to me, that's if I could be philanthropic the entire time, I would, because I get the most enjoyment out of that. I get the most fulfillment out
Right.
of that. We recently got to do a really cool thing, and we do a lot of really cool things for different charities. But something that's had a really big impact, that we did some stuff for the Ronald McDonald House.
Amazing video, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And
Like film.
it was a short film. It was about 5 minutes long. And as it's out there in the world, I'm hearing more and more stories of people saying, "Holy cow, I used the Ronald McDonald House when I was younger, and that was, I understood that life."
Right.
Or they didn't have the Ronald McDonald House, and that was my family traveling back and forth when I was sick.
Yeah.
And to create something that can connect to people without there really being a strong call to action,
Yeah.
it's very moving and fulfilling.
You do a lot of philanthropic work like Salvation Army, Ronald McDonald House. You donate your time and your talent.
We do. The Blue Jackets Foundation is a big one where they touch on lots of different pillars,
Yep.
Including pediatric cancer, getting kids out to read and to play the sport, diversity in the sport, which is a big thing for me, because I have 2 daughters who play the sport.
Right.
So it's a family affair that we get to go play hockey, and I want the same opportunities that everybody would have, and not be looking at it as, because history shows it's a sport played by men.
Right.
But like that, there's a tide changing. I just read some articles about the figure skating is going a wayside because young girls want to have sticks in their hand and play. And I think that that's just a great thing, and to be advocates for that.
Right.
So I try to find things that that I like and support, but I encourage everyone here, if they have a philanthropic endeavor that they want to participate in, that we allow like 10% of our time and talents to give back. I mean, that 10% kind of goes back to the old, Irish Catholic in me, I guess, but
yeah,
to give back. But that's what we can do. And
but you could have done it another way, and you didn't, for obvious reasons, or for reasons that are obvious to you. You could have just said, if we have a good year, at the end of the year, I'm going to write a check to X, Y, or Z charity. And instead you've decided, no, what would be better is we use our time, our talent, some of our treasure to do what we do best in a way that would be fulfilling to us as well. I think it might be a subtle difference, but I think it's profoundly different in an organization, because we have many clients where we'll go through our process, talk to employees, and they say, I'm expected to donate to this charity or that charity every year, and I don't feel connected to it. Whereas you've done something that is important to you, and I know your team gets involved in a deep way. It's a seamless integration. So it's almost like your beliefs don't get parked at the door. You take them into the business.
Right.
And that's got to help with your own personal fulfillment.
And it does. And one of the, when I think about if we had a good year, we can write the check. Any real business owner knows that doesn't really work that way. I mean, as you get to scale, it can work that way. But
yeah,
the value of that money that you would write a check is, in our instance, 10 times that value.
Right.
When we have 10 incredible people or 20 incredible people donating their time and services, because they're going to give more to it, probably because of less restrictions or the creative process. And we get to be kind of the driver of it.
Yep.
They're getting the value of that donation, of that time. If it's 10% of the time, it's 100%. There's almost an impact of tenfold.
Absolutely. And I think the ability for you to be able to explain why you're doing those things because of the story that you have, your differentiators, and why it's important. You've now got something to point back to and say, well, here's why we do this. And that's so powerful for team members, for customers to start associating you with that thing. If we come back here in 3 or 4 years' time, I guarantee, and you're still doing these podcasts, and I'm no doubt the business will be growing and thriving, I guarantee you'll be more known for personal, creative, and professional fulfillment, and you'll get business because of that, not just because you're a video production company. And you'll donate time based on that. You'll donate services. So it's all tied back to this story of who you are and why you exist, which is why it's so important that you went through this process.
Yeah, and like I said, it was a very painstaking mental process for me. But at the end of the day, like if had I not known that, I don't know where we would be. And not that it would be a bad thing. It would be a different company. And I definitely feel stronger. Like the work would always be good because we're talented people. But I think the work has more meaning now.
Yep.
I feel like there's more involvement from the team, people, and team members and even clients. They're more likely to approach us in a different way. I think I've done more business this year via text message than I've ever done.
With people you've built relationships
exactly
with?
Because they feel they can hit me up on some sort of platform, whether it's like Instagram or Facebook or even just a straight away text, to come back and say, hey, I got this problem and I want you guys to help solve it.
Yeah.
And that was the other thing that we came up with, that we found for this thing. We really are creative problem solvers.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I guess is a thing that, we joke, thing you can write on the wall, but it's true because we really thrive off of that creative problem solving process of figuring out, what do you need?
Yeah.
How can we help you? And then are we a good fit? And if we can't help you, we're going to tell you who can, and we're okay with that. And a lot of people in our business will try to make a square peg fit in a round hole. Right.
That's servant leadership. You're figuring out what they need.
Right.
And you're providing them solutions, whether you're the one to provide it or not.
And, I think that will open up areas of opportunity for us. But, as we look ahead at like 2019, we're really excited. But what excites you about this year coming up?
I'm excited about travel. I'm actually really excited to get more into my whiskey tastings.
Okay.
I'm excited as we move towards more remote clients, being able to work with more varied, interesting clients from around the country who are doing amazing things. That's really exciting to me. That and some travel back to Ireland that's going to come up in the next few months. I think it's going to be a fun year.
All right. So I want you to, this is an opportunity, like, where can people find you? And how can they get a hold of Barry and do either the whiskey tastings or find out more about Storyforge?
So Storyforge, we can help your business with your story. Just go to storyforge.co, storyforge.co. For my whiskey tastings, you can go to storiesandsIps.com. On Instagram, I'm Irish Whiskey Barry.
Of course you are.
And on Twitter, I'm Irish Whiskey BC. So
was it already taken, or just
it's
can't
too
fit
long?
It's too long.
It's too long.
They limit your characters.
I know, but BC works. And I'd enjoy having a glass of whiskey with anybody who'd like to reach out.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on. And
thank you.
I'm glad we had a like I said, start and end the same way. So
it was great. I like how you brought it full circle.
There we go.
Good for you. Thanks.